you've ever asked yourself, how can I get the swing and the golf game that I've always imagined without trying every tip, every training aid, watching every video after video on social media, then this podcast is for you. Welcome. I'm Daniel Guest, and welcome to the IMAGEN Golf Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by IMAGEN Golf and PXG. All right, Imagination, welcome back. I am fresh off my tour win, my tour win with my father and son event with my son, and I'm happy to say that my streak is still rock solid. I beat him by one stroke on the last hole, the 18th hole, to sink an 18-foot, 18-foot birdie, and rolled right in the center of the cup, and it was amazing. So an amazing time down in St. Pete. And got to go to the Valspar and just had an amazing time hanging out with our son. So, Daniel, that one's for you, and hopefully you never beat me, man. But anyway, today, look, I want to talk about, it's everything we do at IMAGEN Golf is to make people better at golf, right? Imagine, that was a whole theme of the company. Imagine what you could do if you were better at X, whatever X is. Imagine if you had better clubs, or clubs that actually fit you. Imagine if you had a better swing, a better backswing, a better, contact. You get the point, right? And likewise, imagine if you were doing the wrong things, right? Or working on the wrong things. How well do you think you'd get? I can answer that for you. You wouldn't get any better at all. And I'd make the argument that you would get worse. All right. So it's only Thursday, and in Monday through Thursday, I've had a handful of students come in who had taken instruction before, who had a very clear idea on what they were working on, right? They told me what they were working on. They told me what they needed to fix. And look, I hear that all the time, and I don't not agree with them, all right? Or I don't argue with students. I just say, hey, if you don't mind, let's wipe the slate clean. Let's take a fresh assessment of the way that you present here and now today. And then we'll go from there. We'll make a plan of what you're doing today. Maybe not what you did before, maybe not what you think you're doing, but it'll be a relevant plan to what you present right here, right now. And all three of these, man, I swear to God, if they kept on the road of working on what they were working on, they would have had no chance of getting better this year or any year for that matter. So I thought I'd talk to you about them. Like these real world examples, walk you through what happened. And I think it should shed some light on maybe what you got going on. So we're going to break down these one by one. Okay. So we're going to talk about the first one, the first student. And by the way, the names are changed to prevent or to protect the innocent, I guess. Right. But look, every one of these students that came in, the three that I'm about to talk to, was passionate about golf, right? They had a ton of enthusiasm. They really wanted to get better. They've been trying to get better for multiple years, and they've already seeked out professional instruction, and it wasn't working for them. And that kills me, because that's a bad look on the industry, right? But they weren't ever going to give up. But they knew that they had to do something different. So I give them all the credit in the world for seeking us out for that, right? So the first one, let's call him Mike, all right? Mike is a 14 handicap, right? He is a total social media / YouTube video junkie, all right? He came in absolutely over obsessing, right, on his backswing. He showed me half a dozen of videos on his phone. Some of them were from 2+ years ago. That's how long he's been working on this. He was pausing some of them. He was telling me look how his club is, and I'm doing air quotes here in the studio, laid off. He talked about his position at his hands at P3. This guy, right? He was talking about his takeaway was slightly inside. He's been hitting hundreds, if not thousands, of golf balls. He practices at least twice a week. He's a grinder, right? So we just go through our normal routine. We're assessing his swing. I have him hit 2, usually 3 clubs, right? And we're on track, man. And I'm not saying a whole lot, but I know I'm not seeing everything that he's telling me. And the data is actually telling a totally different story, right? Um, he's not losing power, right, because of his backswing. This guy had almost no follow through. I mean, he has this big high backswing, right? And his once he hit the golf ball, his swing almost stopped. I'm not even exaggerating, and just kind of, turned his body to the left a little bit. Um, and he was definitely treating the swing as if the golf ball was the finish line, right? He was swinging, for example, to the ball, not through the ball. So he was so hyper focused on impact and the moment that the club face met the ball or hit the ball, that he literally was stopping rotation, right? And this absolutely leads to massive decel, and he was losing um, distance over the years, right? It leads to flip wrists, and it absolutely leads to zero consistency. And that's a common theme I hear every day. Hey, Daniel, I'm looking for more consistency. So I had to look Mike in the eye and say, look, man, your backswing is certainly not the problem. In fact, it's not even bad, man. But your swing, your follow through, and your swing in general pretty much just dies at the ball, right? And you can have the prettiest takeaway in the world. You can have the nicest, P3, you can have the nicest, at the top. You can have everything, right? But if you don't commit to your finish, your swing and your game is just dead in the water. It will not get better. And I would argue that over time, it'll get worse. So we ditched all the other stuff that he was talking about with his other instructors, right? And we employed this kind of fix where we stopped talking 100% about his backswing. And we started working on his finish positions. We call it the finish pose drill, right? Your final pose is the ultimate diagnostic tool. We got Mike to swing through the ball and freeze in his finish for like a full 2 or 3 seconds, right? Almost until the ball landed. Almost like Rory McIlroy in this perfect finish where he's actually staring down the fairway, waiting for people to take his picture kind of thing, right? And if you're falling backwards, right? If you're falling on off, you're as an example, he kept falling backwards, so the weight wasn't on his lead leg, right? Then we weren't swinging, efficiently. So we got him to realize the importance of swinging through the ball and the importance of being in balance. We did a whole podcast on that before, right? And making sure that he transferred weight through that swing, not just waiting just to hit the golf ball, right? I got to tell you, the transformation in just like, I'm not even exaggerating, like 10 shots was amazing. Once he stopped caring about the way he looked, right? Once he stopped caring about his takeaway and all the other things that people had told him, and he started focusing on, a balanced, complete finish, as if we say it all the time, as if he was throwing the same 7-iron that we were using into the golf range, right? And he's trying to throw it hard and far and straight. What would that look like? Well, you would certainly have some type of finish, right? That would be big if you were trying to do that, right? And that's exactly what we got. And then over time, over like 20, 30 minutes, what happened was amazing too. His tempo started to smooth out, right? And all of a sudden, he started to find a little bit more yardage. And then his balance started to get a little bit better. It wasn't 100% by the time he left, but it was way better. So in just a 50-minute time frame, right, we got this guy that was totally focused on his backswing was the issue, right? All these other reasons, like I mentioned, were a problem. Everybody that he had worked with before were talking about his backswing. He needed to do this. He needed to do that. And in reality, all we needed to do to get Mike to hit better is to get him to go through the ball and pay attention to the entire golf swing. I'm telling you, this guy is an IMAGEN customer for life. He's a disciple for IMAGEN. All right. So it was mind blowing to see the change in just those 50 minutes. All right. The second one, this one, this one was amazing too. This guy, we'll call him Tom. Right. By the way, I see this all the time. Right. He came into our performance center. Right. Incredibly frustrated. He had been diagnosed by a PGA pro. He diagnosed his own swing videos all the time. And he comes in and he says, which is a PGA term I hear all the time. He's like, I'm swinging like I'm humping a goat, air quotes, right? I'm early extending. I have this early extension problem that I can't stop. And the same way that I just talked about Mike, right? Okay, great. I write it down in my book and we start the assessment. And sure enough, this guy early extends, right? It's an interesting early extension though, because it is a source of power for this guy because, dude, he swings about anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees over the top, right? He had spent his entire off season doing chair drills where he puts his butt against a chair and he's trying to swing, with keeping both cheeks, his right cheek and his left cheek on the chair, right? Trying desperately to keep his hips back. But the second he put a real golf ball in front of him, he stood right up and thrusted his hips, right? And he hit this weak slice and sometimes, a fade actually almost all the time, like a push fade, and then a slice when he missed it, right? And this guy, again, had been diagnosed multiple times, had gone to multiple instructors, and every single one of them is trying to get him to fix this early extension, right? And, look, he had done some research as well on his own. He thought the problem was simply like poor posture, or he said, I'm doing air quotes, he's stiff, right? And he's got bad hip movement. And you know where I'm going with this, right? We got him in the sim, and when we saw that 6 to 8 to 9 degrees over the top consistently, the club is coming down incredibly steep from outside to inside, right? And it's almost coming in to hit him almost, in the midsection. So if he doesn't early extend, right, he is not going to be able to get out of the way of this golf ball, or excuse me, get out of the way of this swing, and it's going to be even worse. So you can tell, like, when you start to work on something like that, if we started to get this guy to start staying down, for lack of a better, right, and stay through the swing, he would have started hitting it off the heel, right? The ball would have been going crazy to the right. So what we needed to do is we had to explain to him, right, that at the end of the day, all of our brain, we're all wired the same. We say that all the time, right? If your club is coming down that steep and that far over the top, right, and you actually manage to keep your hips back like you've been practicing, you'd slam the club, right, 2 feet into the ground behind the ball or right into his midsection, right? You literally would, hurt yourself. And the brain knows that. And the brain knows that's a disaster about to happen. And it forces you to stand up and thrust your hips through the ball, right? So there's no drill that's going to stop that, right? As you're swinging through, right? This early extension, right, wasn't the disease, right? Actually, it was the cure, right? If this guy didn't do that, he wouldn't even be able to play golf. So he was certainly working on the wrong thing, okay? What we had to talk to him about was like, look, man, this is not about your hips or your posture at all, right? And we're not even going to talk about your early extension anymore, because I would make the argument that if we get you swinging, air quotes, more proper, right, more inside to out, that is going to go away naturally. So we're not going to fix something that we don't need to fix. And when we start getting the ball moving or get the club face moving more inside to out, right, your swing is going to present differently, right? Your form is going to present differently. So, and I was pretty confident that that was not going to be there anymore, right? And so we introduced this 1 o'clock feeling that we talk about. Almost, most people talk about, right field, hit it to right field, swing to right field or whatever. And that's better than no command. But, 1 p.m. is a very specific command, and your brain picks up on that easier and faster. All right. So we put an alignment stick on the ground, slightly right of his target line at 1 p.m., right? 12 o'clock would be right in the middle. We worked on his transition, get him to feel like his back was staying, turned to the target for just a fraction of a second longer. He all of a sudden started to drop the club down a little bit more than he was, down to the inside. And then we asked him to start swinging out along that stick, right? As if he was swinging again or hitting, to that right field kind of analogy. And an immediate light bulb went off in this guy's head. I mean, immediately, right? So all we really did was analyze what the real challenge in this guy's swing is, right? And it certainly wasn't his early extension. And if you listen to any of our podcasts, right, or have taken a lesson from us or read any of our books or anything, we believe that your club path is the number one indicator of a good or bad golfer, right? So if you can't swing from the inside out, you have a challenge. And then from there, We go from club path to face direction, right? How is the face in relation to the path? And then from there, how are you striking the ball? Where are you striking the ball? And everything we do, we look through those three things as the lens of getting better. So this guy had spent almost 5 years working on his early extension. And in just 1 hour, I don't want to say it was completely gone, but man, he was hitting the ball farther. He was hitting the ball straighter. I even looked at him. I'm like, hey, man, when was the last time you hit this many baby draws? And you know the answer, never, right? Absolutely never. So there's another perfect example of a student that would have went one more season working on the same thing that he'd been working on before, but it was the wrong thing, all right? The wrong diagnosis. I don't really remember what he told me, whether he diagnosed it first or the PGA Pro diagnosed it first, but it didn't matter. Whoever gave him the diagnosis and his own that was incorrect, right? And again, he would have never gotten better and just been at this plateau for a very, very long time, all right? The last one is John. John is the classic slicer of the golf ball, all right? For 2 years, he told me, he's been going to the range and trying to fix his slice by manipulating his hands, changing his grip, rolling his he was told to roll, I'm doing air quotes, roll his wrists at impact more, all right? He was basically trying to play this game, for lack of a better, of split second timing. What I mean by that was he's trying to get his hands, right, to make a different swing every single time, to close or to square on the ball differently every single time, right? Almost steering the golf club because his body mechanics and his actual swing was all over the place. So just when you say that out loud, here's a guy that's trying to stop his slice by manipulating his hands. And we always say at IMAGEN, look, bigger body parts beget smaller. So hands are smaller. So when you just say that out loud, if you're slicing the ball to the right, it's probably not your hands, right? And I just looked at him and said, look, man, you are trying to fix a problem that your body, right, has created in the first, I don't know, let's call it 16 to 18 inches of your swing, right? And I told him, I said, look, no one, you included, right? And by the way, he was a former D1 athlete, soccer player. I said, so he had he was very in tune with his body and he listened intently on everything I was saying, right? But I said, you cannot, right, time a perfect wrist flip, for lack of a better, consistently. And he was swinging it over 90 miles per hour. I said, dude, it is impossible. And he said, well, Daniel, I've done it. I'm like, I bet you have, right? 10% of the time, 11, whatever the number is, right? Followed by another 17 bad shots, right? And by the way, when you flick your wrist like that and you find the center and you time it perfectly, the ball rockets off the face. So it feels like, okay, that's what I'm going for. That's what I'm going for. And I'm convinced that that is, in fact, what the previous coaching had him doing. And I'm convinced that that was the look and feel, right? Definitely the feel that he was going for. So we simply introduced him to, let's call it a tilt and turn philosophy, right? That the swing isn't about his arms, right? It's about turning his core and actually using the ground, right? We did things like a belly button drill where you just take a simple 8-iron, you poke the end of the 8-iron into your belly button, you choke down in the steel, and you just start this kind of one-piece takeaway, right? And if you start using your hands too much, then the club comes off your belly. That drill's like 200 years old, right? We started making sure that his left shoulder stayed down, right? He's a right-handed golfer, all right? And his right shoulder felt like it was going back, right? So we're staying in his posture just a little bit longer, right? All these things, right, started to get him to rotate his core instead of just worry about his hands, right? And he kept asking, well, what about my hands? What about my hands? I'm like, look, don't even worry about your hands. Let's just get your body to rotate a little bit better, right? Let's get your core to get involved or engaged in the golf swing, right? We had him do a wall drill, right? We put him his back against the wall. We move him out about a foot. We use this wall all the time. And we use this drill all the time. And we had him swing, right, within that confined area of 12 inches to the wall without touching it. And before you know it, the transformation was amazing, all right? When we got him to understand that the true power and the straightness, for lack of a better, of hitting a ball, right, comes from bigger body parts and body rotation and ground forces, not how you time your wrist at impact. I'm not even exaggerating, man. Dude, I thought this guy was going to cry, right? I thought he was going to cry. He hit more balls, he said straight, than in one session than he would in the whole 18-hour round, or 18. We probably did have an 18-hour round. He was hitting so many out of bounds. No, in his whole 18-hole round. So another perfect example of probably bad instruction or bad diagnosis, if you would, not bad instruction, but yeah, maybe bad instruction, definitely bad diagnosis, right? Focusing on the smaller things, the symptomatic things, and neglecting everything else, not looking at the real cause. So there's 3 world examples that just happened in 1 week. And I took off Monday, by the way. So it's only happened in 4 days, right? So look, the moral of the story, right? If you are putting in the time, whatever that means to you, you're practicing once a week, you're practicing 3 times, you're practicing every day, and you're not getting any better, right? And your handicaps are not dropping, you need an honest assessment. I almost assure you, you are not working on the correct right thing. All right. You do not need a quick tip. It may be a quick fix, no doubt, but it may not be. And it certainly isn't going to come from your playing partner who's a dentist by day and a golfing partner by, early evening and on the weekends, right? There's no chance. And I highly, highly doubt you're going to find it on social media or YouTube as well, right? Because how would you know what you're looking for? So find a professional that you trust. Find a professional that comes highly recommended by the people that have been there, right? If you look up your instructor and they've been in the business for 10 plus years and they have 60 reviews, run. There's a reason, run. All right. Get to somebody that has a track record of fixing people. All right. Not just giving lessons, but fixing people. That's what we pride ourselves here at Imagine Golf. That's what I've prided myself on through every single lesson. I do it every single day. I want you to stop guessing, start knowing. You'll feel 100% better, right? Get to the range this weekend, all right? Try maybe, if any of these sound familiar to you, maybe try some of the fixes that we give, the finish pose drill, that's, stop fighting your hips or whatever, all right? And better yet, if you want me to evaluate your swing, just send it to me. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. It's free, all right? And that's all I have, all right? So for tips and tools, follow us on all the social media. And I appreciate you listening. Thanks. All right, then. That's today's podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the follow button wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check out our site, imagengolf.com. Check out our YouTube page at Imagine Golf, and we're on all the social media platforms on the same at Imagine Golf. And here's to getting you the swing and the game that you've always imagined. Hey, Daniel here. If you're looking to get new clubs, you need to consider PXG. And I know what you're thinking. PXG is too expensive, or I'm not good enough to get fitted for clubs. And look, I'm here to tell you that neither is true. PXG is no more expensive than any of the top manufacturers out there, and everyone and anyone will benefit from getting fitted for clubs. And here's the best part. It's literally free. That's right. Getting fit at PXG is free. So when you're ready to get a new driver, new woods, new irons, or even a new putter, simply let me know and I'll help you get the swing and the game you've always imagined with a new set of clubs from PXG.